Welcome to Jitasa University, where our goal is to empower nonprofits through free educational content. These short videos are all provided by trusted partners within our network as well, so each topic will be relevant to every organization, regardless of size. Let's dive right in. This month, we're featuring Moses Balian, Senior HR Consultant at Justworks, a technology company that levels the playing field for small businesses and nonprofits through powerful self-service capabilities to meet their payroll, tax, HR, and compliance needs. Let's pass things over to Moses and get started with the content.
Hi, thanks so much for joining me today. And thank you so much to Jitasa for hosting Justworks for this presentation. As a quick intro, my name is Moses Balian, SPHR, that's Senior Professional in Human Resources, and I am a Senior HR Consultant here at Justworks. So I work with customers providing best practices guidance, a range of HR issues. A large percentage of Justworks customers are nonprofits, and so today I was hoping to provide some actionable guidance around HR compliance for nonprofits and what you need to know in 2025. Let's jump right into it. Uh, Today, part of compliance is going to be talking about hidden costs of running a small and growing nonprofit by way of potential penalties, non-compliance, and what can happen when missteps are taken. Most of the time, it's not big, obvious problems that hold a nonprofit or any growing organization back. It's the little things that might fly under the radar. And it's not necessarily a compliance misstep, big or small. It might be a little thing, something that flies under the radar. Things like time drains, tasks that eat up just a frustrating and disproportionate amount of your time, missed opportunities that don't show up on your balance sheet, but things that still have a real impact. And over time, these hidden costs really start to pile up. They chip away at your time, your resources, your energy, and your ability to invest your human capital into the growth of your organization and its success. So today we're going to talk about what those hidden costs really look like and where they tend to show up and what it could look like if we can stay ahead of them. Who is JustWorks? We're here to help make running a business or a nonprofit easier, especially when it comes to these things that slow you down. And some of the big ones are payroll, benefits, HR, and compliance, which is a catch-all term that can mean so very many things. But at JustWorks, our whole idea is to level the playing field so that small businesses, small nonprofits can access the same tools, support, resources, and benefits that enterprise organizations do. If you're not familiar with a PEO, that's our business model. It's a professional employer organization. There's a bunch of them out there, but we're the best one. It's basically a smarter way to handle payroll, benefits, and compliance all in one place, all in-house. Before moving on, I am an HR professional, so I must say that the information shared today is for informational and best practices guidance only. It is not meant to be taken as legal or tax advice. Please seek an attorney or a tax advisor for any questions particular to your circumstances. So with that, let's move on and take a look at the evolving landscape of HR compliance for nonprofits. Let's dive into these complexities a little bit and talk about why HR compliance is so crucial for nonprofits. Nonprofits are mission-driven organizations, but they are not exempt from employment regulations. I know that might sound obvious, but it's a common misconception. Staying compliant protects your mission, your reputation, and your solvency, your financial stability. Uh, Unique challenges for nonprofits often, I don't have to tell you if you're watching this video, often are limited resources, volunteer management, and having a diverse workforce. And I think we know that means diverse not just optically, not just background, but in expectations of professional decorum, of benefits, of access, of entitlement, of what work looks like. I know I've been a volunteer and managed volunteers, and it's the richness and of those communities and those collaborations that are all part of the experience. The consequences of noncompliance with respect to employment regulations can be fines, penalties, litigation, hopefully not, and reputational damage. And it no longer needs to be said that the proliferation of means by which a reputation can be damaged or tarnished is only exponentially increasing. And so, partnering with not just HR, but a digital media specialist is going to be a powerful tool in reputation management. Not the topic of today's presentation, but very worthwhile investment of your time to learn more about, I think. Proactive compliance is going to be key to sustainable operations. So let's get into what that looks like a little bit. 2025. Whew. Essential legal challenges and changes that nonprofits must address. Here are some of the most significant things. I'm not going to spend a proportionate amount of time on each issue as as the demand of its attention necessarily. So I wanted to call that out in advance. We're rather going through a list. Some of these are more impactful, will require more investment and research and um, partnership with an HR professional than others. So many states are expanding paid leave laws. These reasons not to work are very good ones that often have to do with illness, injury, time off work if you're a victim of domestic violence, both to safeguard your own safety, that of your family, and to secure economic support and housing. These are some of the laws that are being passed on the state and local level. There are also parental leave. Paid parental leave is proliferating across states throughout the US. Just a few years ago, there were only 3 or 4 state programs, and now over 13 states have passed or implemented paid family leave laws that will provide wage replacement to new parents, those giving birth or welcoming a child into their family another way. The expanded definition of if you're taking family medical leave, another common reason can be to take care of an ailing or ill family member who needs caregiving and support. This can provide protected time off of work as well as wage replacement. These laws are also proliferating, and the definition of family member is often being expanded significantly. New York is famous for protecting an employee's absence who needs to care for a family member or to care for a person with whom their relationship resembles a familial relationship. They don't have to be blood, basically, your chosen family. I think that's incredible, inclusive, and something that we can expect on the state level in states where you might expect that kind of thing to be passed. Um, with the way things work as far as employment law in the US is a lot is left up to the states. And talent is increasingly geographically agnostic. We're kind of seeing these things are moving in the opposite direction of geography's mattering more than ever for regulation, but it's mattering less than ever for talent. So having a knowledge such as a partner like Justworks to navigate multi-state compliance complexities is already essential, table stakes, and it's just only going to get easier to mess up and be penalized going forward. Another common change that we'll see this year and really any year is minimum wage and salary threshold increases. So many states, of course, have a higher minimum wage than the federal, which has not changed since 2008. And these are inching up again all over the place. There's dozens of state and local minimum wages that are constantly changing along different timelines, really important to stay ahead of. There's also these things called exempt salary thresholds. Now, these are notably in New York and California specifically. You have to make a certain salary in order to be exempt from overtime. So it's not good enough to be paid in these two states $38,000 a year. And whether you work 20 hours or 80 hours, that's your paycheck. New York and California say, if you make that level of a salary, if you make less than, it's more like 60K a year, then you need to be paid overtime if you work overtime, calculated prorated based on your annual salary. So again, something that a lot of my customers aren't aware of until they come on to Justworks and increase their compliance knowledge. So just one of many dynamics that are really important to be aware of. If you have entry-level staffers who are making entry-level money and you've been hiring them in states where that's permitted, um, whenever you're hiring in a new jurisdiction or even revisiting your compliance in existing jurisdictions, just one thing to keep an eye out for. Notably, the next bullet point made this slide because of its uniqueness in that the United States Congress passed a law protecting workers. And I don't mean to sound sarcastic. This just isn't something that happens very often. So in 2023, the US Congress passed the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, and that came along with some disability accommodations compliance. So as of June 2023, employers with 15 or more employees, including nonprofits, must provide reasonable accommodation for known limitations related to pregnancy, childbirth-related medical conditions, unless, of course, it poses undue hardship. So these are things that it's important to train managers on, and this is going to be anywhere in the US as far as appropriate accommodation or dialogue. If, and then maybe they escalate it to HR around pregnant employees and any disabled employee in the workforce. Uh, Changes around beneficial ownership. So BOI reporting under the Corporate Transparency Act, many nonprofits are exempt, like 501c3s generally are, but 501c7s might not be. So that might not be a large swath of the audience for this video, but be sure to research BOI changes under the CTA. Enforcement is currently being halted due to a nationwide injunction, but stay informed as, increasing laws are being enforced and appealed and injunctions and stays. And so case precedents and current court, legal status is constantly in flux. So an important thing to monitor. Let's see, California, their charitable fundraising platform regulations under AB 488, Assembly Bill 488, nonprofits operating or having fundraising efforts in California, which if you're on the internet soliciting donations from anywhere, you might be fundraising in California. Effective January 1st, 2025, there's this really interesting new law that enhances transparency for online charitable fundraising. And so these are like your payment facilitators. So the organization that you're hiring to collect funds and then remit them to your organization, there's new transparency and reporting requirements. So any good one will have published the fact or sent out a notice that they're in compliance with the new California law that went into effect January 1st, 2025. But this is just something to ask about, to double check on that your donation payment processor is compliant. And really, even if you don't have any operations in California, you very well might be fundraising in California just passively. So it's a really important thing to take a look at. And then, of course, this is constantly in flux, awkward conversation, but federal grant recipients under the new executive order back in January have to end illegal DEI programs. Interestingly, illegal DEI has not been very clearly defined, but on paper, it's not meant to be, it doesn't read as anything revolutionary. It just says your DEI programs can't be discriminatory based on race, sex, or the other protected characteristics. So the subtext here is that DEI programs have a disparate impact on some protected characteristics, some groups over others. And so it's still in flux. Best practices are still changing around what reporting, what documentation looks like to certify that any DEI program is not propagating discrimination or reverse discrimination. So if you are a federal grantee, I hope you're already working with an expert. If you're not, a really important change in the legal landscape to stay ahead of, stay solvent. Okay, avoiding pitfalls, compliance mistakes that nonprofits make. Many nonprofits have constraints or lack of HR knowledge. I mean, heck, that's why you're watching this video, and may fall prey to common compliance errors. So I'm going to run through these. I find these interesting. I have to remember that not everyone does. Um, but one common one, honestly, if you remember any, it's this first one on this slide, misclassification of workers. And I'm intentionally using the word worker rather than employee because we've got employees, we've got independent contractors, and we've got volunteers. It is generally not up to you or up to the worker which one they are. Of course, somebody has to be willing to contribute their efforts without compensation to be a volunteer, but what those efforts are might not be legally may not legally go unpaid. Perhaps not. It's something that you actually have to analyze. Furthermore, misclassification of independent contractors is rampant. Sometimes it's the preference of the worker. They've got their own clients, they like the independence. And sometimes it's for the reason of the employer, because independent contractors don't have to be extended benefits, enrollment opportunities. Employers pay for Social Security and Medicare employer portion, 50% of their employees, but not of their independent contractors. And generally, employees are benefit from non-discrimination laws, sexual harassment protection, parental leave, lots of things that independent contractors don't. And enforcement is actually most commonly seen from the IRS because of the tax implications, because there's some employer payroll taxes that come along with employees that don't with independent contractors. And so, again, even if you think you have a really good relationship with your person and they're happy they're in IC and you're happy they're in IC, I'm not saying enforcement or the chances of auditing, I'm not saying are like the highest in the world, but misclassification of employees can cause issues, and if discovered, will really put you on the radar uh, of the IRS, which that's not a spotlight you want to be in. So take a look at your classification of workers, work with an HR professional to close that liability gap. We'll move a little more quickly through the rest. Inadequate record keeping and documentation. So the failure to maintain accurate and complete employee records um, can expose liability issues. Again, which just gets you on the radar as a non-compliant organization. And once you have their attention, you tend to keep it. I-9 is obviously I-9, if for those who don't know, is um, verification of U.S. employment eligibility, namely U.S. citizens, U.S. green card holders, or those holding some kind of visa that allows them to work. Of course, I'm saying this in July 2025, enforcement of undocumented labor is increasing at an unprecedented rate. And that includes I-9 compliance and accuracy. So you might be saying, well, I don't employ any undocumented immigrants. I don't have anything to worry about. You don't have the most to worry about, but I-9 audits are increasing. And a study a few years ago showed that as many as 50% of I-9s contain errors. And so these are things like how the acceptable documentation was jotted down, the certification by the employer that the documents were appropriately inspected. So take a look at your I-9 records, think about the last time that process was revamped, and take a visit. Just if you're an employer, this could potentially impact you. Let's see. Next, wage and hour laws, also referred to the FLSA or Fair Labor Standards Act. That just refers to paying people overtime, paying people on time, and uh, meeting or exceeding minimum wage. Talked about a lot about that already. And then there's outdated employee handbooks and policies. An outdated handbook is just as bad as no handbook from a compliance standpoint. And from an employee experience standpoint, it might even be worse. So this is where, it's not 2005 anymore. We're not sitting down with a Word doc and a blinking cursor when it comes to employee handbooks. There's lots of sophisticated tools out there, and I'm not even talking about AI, although that can help with verbiage, if not content. But work with an HR provider that has an employee creation and maintenance tool. It's really the way to go. I mean, there are feeds that have every employment regulation change, legal change, case precedents, Department of Labor final rule that cascades through and will update your employee handbook automatically. This technology exists. So the time savings is tremendous. I really encourage anyone who has an employee handbook project on their plate to ask for help, engage a provider that already has the solutions in place for you to meet these obligations. I think I've hammered home the point of state and local labor laws being incredibly important. There are far, 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 far oh geez, far more state and local labor laws than there are federal labor laws, even in less jurisdictions with that are less litigious, right? So really, no matter where you're operating in the U.S., take a look, engage an HR consultant to take a look at your compliance with state and local laws. There might be more than you think. Uh, uh, Great, let's move on. The last thing I was going to talk about is poor hiring practices. I have in my notes, not on the slide. But reference checks, background checks, if appropriate, and having a structured interview process is really important for making good hires. So let's talk about tools and resources to stay compliant with labor laws. The first is to develop and maintain a comprehensive HR policy and employee handbook. I went into depth about this. The technology exists. This is not something you have to do by yourself. It is a daunting project. I know it is. I've had it on my plate. You are not alone. Uh, Always consult a labor law attorney for specific advice. What's great is a lot of these handbook tools, like the one that Justworks provides access to for its customers, the language, the boilerplate language provided is meant to be compliant. So the whole idea is you can work with an HR partner to draft an employee handbook that hopefully you can take to your attorney and they'll say, no notes. It's perfect. Now certified compliant. The tool that you work with won't be able to certify compliance. Only an attorney can do that, but it can get you, the idea is to get an A on that final exam so that the revisions are few, if any, which saves you a tremendous amount of money on legal fees, of course. Invest in have in clear communication of these policies to all employees. This doesn't have to be anything that complicated. An intranet system or some to use more modern verbiage, a portal where you can host documents. Document management is really important where employees can see their offer letter, their pay stubs, their W-2s, their benefits enrollment, maybe even past performance reviews, all in one place. And one of the most important is going to be your employee handbook. If you have a remote workforce, virtual digital labor law posters. You don't have a lunchroom to put these posters up in, but anyone who's worked in a physical office has seen them before. These are still required, just can be digitally hosted. So a partner like Justworks, for example, the company I work for, has a great document management platform that you can leverage effectively to have employees have access to your policies and practices. And then designate an internal HR lead or outsource your HR functions. Now, Justworks customers, many, 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 many of them do not have HR. They don't have an HR manager and they certainly don't have an HR director. We work with the smallest segment of businesses and nonprofits in the US. Literally 2 to upwards of a few hundred employees. That is our sweet spot. So, but I do need someone at my customer to be the HR touch point. This can be an operations person. Maybe it's a founder if you're only 3 people still. It could be a recruiter. Just that's the person who's been the closest and most proximate to HR in their career. But anyone can do HR with a competent, compassionate, knowledgeable partner on their side. All right, strategies and resources for success. Just some places you can go. U.S. Department of Labor, Wage and Hour Division does offer some compliance assistance for toolkits, fact sheets, and guidance. The EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, has resources on anti-discrimination laws, and the Department of Labor, as well as each discrete state's Department of Labor or whatever they call it in that state, is a crucial resource for state-specific wage, hour, and leave laws. Now, if you don't feel like Googling for .gov resources, you also could ask your HR consultant if you had one, which as a Justworks customer, you would, to keep you updated with laws that are salient to your organization and to your growth trajectory and goals. Now, what's great is Justworks isn't just for nonprofits. There are organizations that are. And so I'm not saying we're the only player in town. There are some really great nonprofit specific support organizations. One I'll call out is the National Council for Nonprofits that offers extensive resources, guides, and updates on compliance issues specifically related to your community, your cohort. And there are state associations as well. Now, still, a huge part of nonprofit compliance is employment compliance. And as I said before, be you for profit or not for profit, employment regulation is almost always identical. And so you're not exempt from the law and from compliance. So having a nonprofit, for-profit, agnostic HR consultant, very, very valuable for the nitty-gritty details related to aspects of employment. Regular training and education is going to be important. If you have people managers, there are some missteps that people managers can make, not just as leaders, but as stewards of the organization's compliance, liability exposure. There's a lot of damage that managers can do, whether it's asking illegal interview questions, things like, where are you from? Sounds like harmless small talk, right? Unlawful to ask a candidate, where are you from? It opens the door to potential national origin discrimination under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So, among other potential missteps of people managers might be one I touched on before, not appropriately entering into a cooperative dialogue with a pregnant employee who might need accommodation, some kind of change in their work duties or their physical environment of their workspace in order to fulfill their essential functions. If a manager shuts that down too early, it stunts the conversation. The employee seeks resources elsewhere, and that very well might be an attorney. Lastly, perform regular HR reviews to identify compliance gaps. Need I say more? Leveraging HR technology. HRIS is HR information systems. This automates record keeping, payroll, and benefits. An HRIS can take many forms, but is ideally should be your one-stop shop for payroll, benefits, compliance, and document management, things like employee handbooks that I mentioned before. You can automate a lot of HR tasks to boost operational efficiency. Being an HR generalist, HR manager today looks very different than it did when I started my career, and for the better. There are a lot of efficiencies that have been built in to allow future people operations leaders to focus on building programs that impact employee experience, that make the workplace better, that develop talent. Anything for a performance review process to mentorship programs, Um, this is really what most HR professionals want to be focusing on, and technology has unlocked our ability to spend more and more of our time in those strategic areas. It's time for your shameless plug. You can leverage Justworks for compliance support. So I've been talking about what a good HR partner looks like. It's a simple all-in-one solution. It's a partner, not just a platform. And it's one that's built for small businesses and is designed to scale. So we're looking to remove friction, add clarity, and make space, white space, in your brain, in your workflow to actually run your organization. So ideally, no more stitching systems together. That's actually one reason we were founded is our founder is a software engineer, and he was an early employee at a very well-known technology company. And he was frustrated by how disjointed their HR tech stack was. And so he set out and said, I'm going to build the all-in-one HR solution. And I think he succeeded. And whether you're hiring employee number one, or you're opening your fifth location, or hiring your 37th remote employee in your 34th state, JustWorks has all the employment regulation and employment support that you may need in order to hire people effectively and grow your organization with confidence. So ultimately, this is about removing drag, decreasing air resistance that slows you down and replacing it with the kind of support that gives you space to lead, confidence to grow, and clarity in how you operate. A lot of the themes of today have been compliance and risk protection, and to stay ahead of problems, not react to them. So things we handle are like automated tax filings, compliance monitoring, things so things don't fall through the cracks. And the idea is that you can stay compliant and actually not have to worry about it. Most importantly, another theme of today has been you're not on your own. You, you don't have to do this by yourself. You've got HR compliance experts when you need them, and real people who can talk you through the tough stuff, whether it's the nitty-gritty of compliance and regulation, or whether it's a really messy human employee situation. Talk to an HR expert, somebody who's seen this before and knows how to do it, because there is a best practice for almost every scenario. And compliance and people can already feel messy, but we help make it manageable. And so instead of second guessing every step, we want you to have the clarity and confidence in what's required, because this stuff shouldn't be a scramble. It should be a triage, it should be a collaboration, a partnership, and a confident stride forward. So, proactive compliance, protecting your mission, empowering your people. This is a summary of many of the things we spoke about today. Review current HR policies for 2025, assess worker classifications, identify areas where training opportunities are, explore suitable HR technology solutions, and connect with us for a deeper dive into your specific HR and compliance needs. Again, I've been Moses Ballion, Senior Professional in Human Resources. This is my amazing colleague, Kayla. If anything about today's presentation made you think, wow, these JustWorks people seem pretty great, seem to know their stuff, I'd like to talk to them some more. Kayla would love to continue this conversation. She can be reached here at kayla@justworks.com. And I don't believe that link is clickable, but good luck, or copy paste it into your into your browser. You can book time straight with her there if you don't want to pick up the phone. Totally reasonable if you don't. So with that, thanks for your attention, and I'll be receiving some questions.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Moses. Appreciate you walking through all that. Just a few questions that came up. One, you mentioned the HR audits. Do you have any tips on how often you should do those and like what they consist of usually?
Sure, I'm going to be very soft with my response to this, intentionally unspecific, because it really depends what we're talking about. I also prefer the word review rather than audit. An audit to me feels like something external that's happening to you. A review is hygiene for your own organization. So I like that framing. And then broad strokes, generally, this is such a generalization, but annually, uh, every year, new January 1st is, still the big effective date for a lot of new laws and employment regulations. So every December, great timing, try to review your employee handbook for compliance. That'd be a good time to pay attention to that. Review your policies and practices just because January 1 is a very common effective date.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. And then lastly here, do you have any tips on getting leadership buy-in to prioritize HR compliance?
Thanks for the question, Alex. Yes, after more than a decade in HR, you have to show them what bad things can happen if you don't pay due attention to these compliance issues. I have found, maybe this will change with time, but leadership reacts much more strongly to concrete examples of negative consequences than aspirational descriptions of potential positive consequences. And unfortunately, the common lament of HR professionals is it's impossible to quantify the amount of money that we save our organizations, the amount of money we keep from going out the door to prevent sexual harassment lawsuits from happening, to prevent reputational damage that could really impact the attractiveness of our organization as an employer. So it's to work with an HR professional, not to focus on the doom and gloom, but to just to spell out that there are real consequences of HR and compliance neglect. And hygiene is important, just like you take care of your teeth, you take care of your body, you take care of your organization. And if you don't, these consequences may not be immediately apparent, but they will add up over time and you will notice.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think that's all the questions that came up today, but appreciate you, Moses, taking the time, and we hope to have you and Justworks on again in the future.
Thanks. Great to see you again, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. We hope you gained valuable insights into HR compliance tips for 2025. If you had a question or would like to chat about Justworks services, feel free to reach out using the information provided on the screen. Thanks again, and we will see you next time.